American Comics. The Bad Professor, the disbandment of the X-Men begins. Chapter 41. 200 million. This number stimulates the nerves of all people. However, Creel continued, the remuneration we pay you will be credited to your account in a legal way. Quote. In short, laundered money. It is known how horrible the tax department of Eagle Sauce is. Even if you engage in black trade, you have to pay taxes on the sale of flour. The cash they grabbed from the bank and could only be kept in cash. If you want to deposit into an account, you need a series of money laundering operations. Go to the black market to find the organization responsible for money laundering. At the very least, 30% will be deducted. What Creel promised them was the legal income after paying taxes. Such generous conditions. They were all moved. 300 million. Toombs said as he stared into Creel's eyes. Creel shook his head. Dude, you're a little greedy, 250 million, no more. That's $25,500, what do you want to do? Toombs asked. Hit Broadway on Christmas Eve. As for the target, I'll tell you then. It is necessary to say that we have more power than you think. Quote. Within 2 days, $100 million will arrive on your account. If you want to run away with this money, we will find all the betrayers, and many of them will pay for your bad decisions. Quote. After speaking, Creel sat back in the car. 3 black Escalades left in a long way. Pay $100 million first. Such handwriting and self-confidence show that their power is not small. Creel sat in the co-pilot. Above the back seat, it wasn't what Toombs thought. What, big guys? Quote. It's a pair of young siblings. Of course. Creel would never dare to have any contempt because they were young. He saw Wanda Maximoff with his own eyes, using that red magic to squeeze a tank into an iron ball. This effeminate little girl. Definitely a weapon of mass destruction. Now, this weapon of mass destruction has been sent to New York. If not for the rise of Hydra. Baron Strack is definitely reluctant to contribute the two. That's right. Hydra rises, Alexander Pierce goes undercover in S.H.I.E.L.D., thus secretly manipulating the Insight plan. Quote. To ensure that the Insight program runs smoothly. They need to remove all possible obstacles. For example, Iron Man Stark. For example, in New York, most of Nick Fury's energy is restrained. Because the power of Hydra cannot be used. Lest Fury's dog nose smell something unusual. This time the dispatch had almost nothing to do with Hydra. Brothers and sisters of Maximoff. Their parents were in Kosovia and were killed by Stark Industries weapons. A total of 10 elite soldiers. Is Killian's last legacy in this world, the only remaining desperate virus warrior. He, Absorber Carl Creel. The only Hydra who knows the whole plan. The Tums gang. The criminals who robbed the banks of Queens. As for the next stop, of course, it is New York Underground Emperor Jin He. Creel, will Stark really show up on Broadway on Christmas Eve? Wanda, who is still immature, asked. Creel nodded. Of course, on the first Christmas Eve of New York's reconstruction, City Hall will put on a big show on Broadway. The Avengers, Iron Man, the chairman of Stark Industries, Tony Stark will definitely be invited to attend. Not only him, but the mayor of New York, the president of the House, and the capital predators on Wall Street will participate. Come to think of it, this is definitely an attack that is enough to sensationalize the world after the alien invasion. And you will be the protagonists of this grand show, and you will give Stark a perfect curtain call in front of the world. Creel said that future to Wanda. This is a kind of psychological hint to people. Sure enough. Wanda is looking forward to that day. The spotlight of all eyes. In the biggest theater on Broadway, he will take out the arms dealer Tony Stark. Just like Hamlet who completes his revenge. It's Christmas Eve. The orchestra of the State Imperial University was eligible to participate in this year's Christmas Eve Broadway performance, so rehearsals were frequent. Therefore, although Gwen has winter vacation, she still has little time. She is the drummer of the band, a very important role. Compared to Gwen's busyness, Charles is very relaxed. Either accompany Jessica, or accompany Clarice and Katie, 2 little girls, shopping. Or go back to school to accompany Sky. Day by day there was nothing to do, so he was ready to find something to do. Thought about it for a while. Charles founded two companies, one to develop MOBA mobile games and the other to incubate short video platforms. It doesn't matter if you can make money or not, how much money you make. Mainly the 3A masterpieces on the market, the fun is finished. I want to play a dozen real-time battles. Because of the current time node, mobile games and short videos are not yet taken seriously. The end game is the mainstream of the game industry. As for short videos, this concept has not appeared. The whole Eagle sauce played the most, or Twitter. I don't understand the fun of dancing with my little sister, so I can only figure it out myself. Charles said to himself. In Eagle sauce, as long as there is money, there is nothing that cannot be done. Especially New York, the economic and financial center. Charles spent Osborne's money, a large amount of money fell down, and a large number of high-end talents came to hand over their resumes. Soon, the two companies had the corresponding prototypes. Hell's Kitchen. Charles's psychiatric clinic, he just sent away a strange one. Why is it strange? A guy who lives in Hell's Kitchen actually told Charles about his insecurity. Boy. Charles thought they had moved out of the area. The main thing is a tenacious perseverance, right? What Charles can teach him about this situation is to quickly move out of Hell's Kitchen. There is no sense of security in this place. Unless you can be as fierce as yourself. After all, the boss of the Hammerhead gang, Hammerhead, was also shot with a black gun not long ago. Isn't there anyone in this place to consult reliable psychological problems? Charles stirred the coffee in the cup and complained. Charles, reliable psychological problems are nothing more than work, life and love. Most people in Hell's Kitchen are either gangsters or have intersections with gangsters. So they shouldn't have a good problem. Gwen pushed the door in with a pink bag. Because he and Charles are already very familiar. When there were no patients in the house, Gwen always pushed the door straight in. As for Jessica, whether there are patients or not, she has always come and gone casually. Of course. The people of Hell's Kitchen are very reasonable. He never complained about Charles because Jessica disturbed his counseling. Gwen, didn't you rehearse the band today? Tonight is Christmas Eve, and the orchestra teacher asked us to relax and cope with the evening performance. Gwen threw herself on the soft couch. Her light body jumped. Oh, is tonight Christmas Eve? Charles was stunned. Deep down, he is not particularly concerned about Western festivals. So I almost forgot. In the West, Christmas is just as important as the Lunar New Year in the East. Christmas Eve is like Chinese New Year's Eve. Last year, the Zidori invaded New York. People haven't come out of their grief for a long time. So last Christmas, the town hall was hastily done. This year is the first Christmas of the New York redevelopment, so it will be extraordinarily grand. More than the festival itself. There are also people who overcome their grief and re-embrace the vision of a new future. As a result, City Hall held a show at the largest theater in Broadway. No, Charles, you even forgot the days I performed. Gwen huffed and raised his small pink fist to Charles in protest. I just forgot that tonight was Christmas Eve. Charles spread his hands. So how are you going to spend Christmas Eve this year? Do you want to go to my performance? Gwen leaned forward and asked. Talking to Charles on the phone last night, she knew Jessica had recently gone out. Since Jessica is not there. Of course, he is going to launch a fierce offensive. The Eastern powers have a saying that the opportunity must not be lost, and the time will not come. Okay, I'll see it later in the evening. Oye. Gwen let out a small cheer in her heart. She had rehearsed for so long, if Charles couldn't see what it was interesting. It was supposed to invite Charles and Jessica to go together. But if Jessica went, she couldn't be alone with Charles on Christmas Eve. Yes. When the performance was over, Gwen prepared other small projects. Anyway, it must be the most memorable Christmas Eve. Before leaving, Gwen handed the invitation to Charles and said, Charles, see you at the Mage Theater in the evening, don't be late. Quote. Even if it's the end of the world, it's never late. Charles joked. At night, Broadway is full of traffic and splendor. Starting from Battery Park, the street runs from south to north across Manhattan Island, covering a total length of more than 25 kilometers. There are dozens of theaters on both sides of the street, as well as bars, entertainment centers and other places. It is the best place for leisure and entertainment in New York. The Theater of Mager has a long history of more than 100 years. After several changes, it is still the largest theater on Broadway. George Stacy arrived early on the scene. As New York police chief, he is responsible for the safety of tonight's show. Because there are too many big shots tonight. Mayor of New York, President of the House of New Yorks, Chairman of Stark Industries, and Tony Stark of Iron Man, Norman Osborn, Wall Street's capital predators in the financial world. It is no exaggeration. If a shell lands in the theater of MAG tonight, the economy and finance of Eagle Sauce will encounter an unprecedented earthquake. Richard, you take a few people in charge of the theater's power distribution room. Carl, watch the back door of the theater. No one is allowed to enter except the participants and staff tonight. While arranging it, George saw Gwen getting out of the taxi in the distance. Because there are too many big people's vehicles tonight, in order to avoid traffic jams, taxis can only stop at most 200 meters from the MAG theater. Gwen trotted over and saw George standing outside the theater as well. Hey Dad, why are you here? Gwen greeted George. The police department is responsible for the safety of tonight's performance, and I don't know why, I feel a little uneasy. By the way, if you are participating in the show, you have to enter through the back door. Quote. George said. Gwen nodded. I'll go later, wait here for a friend first. Huh. It may be all the old father's natural skills. George smelled an unusual feeling at once. Wait for friends. It can't be a man. Gwen stood beside George, her tall figure, blonde hair and straight legs, like a beautiful landscape outside the MAG theater. There are many high-class celebrities who got the invitation tonight, but no one has the purity and agility of a girl like Gwen. Her beauty is unique. There were already several people who saw Gwen, their eyes flashed with obsession, and when they took the opportunity to talk with George, they showed their excellent conversation and aristocratic temperament. George was polite to them. After all, they are all young talents in New York, young prosecutors in the limelight, and young and promising private equity managers who manage billions of dollars. It's better to be friends with good people than the simple college students in her school. This is very good for her future. Of course. George just wanted to be friends. If it's too far, forget it. One is that Gwen is only 19 years old this year, far from the time to talk about marriage. Secondly, he was also a police chief in New York. Worried about Gwen's future. Seriously, George isn't like most Eagle Sauce parents with little anxiety or worry. Gwen showed little interest in these people. From the way she kept looking at her watch, anyone with a discerning eye could see that Gwen was waiting for someone, and that he was a person who was important to her. At 1945, Charles arrived here by car. Charles, here. Gwen, who was standing at the door of the theater, waved at Charles. At this time, there are more and more big people present, and George needs to maintain a mechanical smile and shake hands with these people frequently. However, he still paid attention to his daughter out of the corner of his eye. When Charles was seen, the brow is a twist. Haven't seen it. He was sure he had never seen Charles in newspaper news, or in authoritative or non-authoritative inventories like the New York 10 Outstanding Youths. This shows that Charles's identity is relatively general. In addition, he looks a lot older than Gwen. In addition to being very handsome. There is no merit. Chief Stacy, you just got a little distracted. Stephen Strange withdrew George's sore hand and said. As the top neurosurgeon in all Eagle Sauce, his hands are heavily insured, and if George breaks them, it will be bad. He followed George's gaze and saw that it was Gwen and Charles flirting intimately. Although I'm not a big advocate of student romance, I want to say that they look like a good match. George almost fainted by Strange. Christine, who was invited to watch the performance with Strange, put her hand on her forehead, and she felt that Strange was suitable for staying in the operating room. After dragging Strange into the theater, Christine said, Stephen, what are you talking about? He's the police chief of New York. Quote. Of course I know, and I'm still the #1 neurosurgeon. The proud Stephen said. In addition to making more money as a top lawyer or doctor in Eagle Sauce, their social status is also very, very high. After Gwen left, George also turned and left the theater gate. He was going to have a good chat with this guy who had cheated on his little padded jacket. Right at this moment, Norman Osborn arrived at the scene, and countless flashes from the media were aimed at him. Because the lizard weirdo who was recently captured turned out to be Professor Kurt Connors. Professor Connors is the leader of a biologics research and development program at Osborne, for several years. The media wanted to ask Norman. Connors' potion to turn into a lizard has nothing to do with Osborne. Norman did not answer to the media. He accidentally saw Charles, and suddenly a strange feeling surged in his heart, feeling that Charles had the same as the Holy Lord. Feel. It's like a very strange intuition. Because he had never seen the entity of the Holy Lord. But he saw Charles. Consider Charles, Holy Lord. Quote. This is actually the reason for the ideological seal. It is a surrender that comes from the blood instinct. Thereupon, Norman Osborn walked up to Charles and chatted with Charles very politely for a while. When the media noticed this scene, they all felt incredible. You must know Norman Osborn, who created Osborne's business empire. It is one of the largest group companies in New York. Even if Stark Industries' market capitalization is above the Osborne. However, this still does not affect Norman's senior position in the business world. Norman has been a shallow man over the years. New York doesn't know how many young entrepreneurs who want to visit their homes but are turned away. But today, Norman actually showed his appreciation for a young man. There are even actions that make people feel that Norman is currying favor with young people. Of course, it would be outrageous to say, curry favor, even in the face of Stark. Norman is qualified to maintain the posture of his predecessors. Therefore, the media is more willing to believe that it is a visual deviation caused by the lighting, or the angle. George also saw this scene. He couldn't help but pause, to disturb Norman's conversation with the young man. Forget it, let's wait. To be appreciated by Norman Osborn, maybe there is still some ability. George said in his heart. Charles did not enter the theater with Norman because Black Widow Natasha arrived in an Audi TT. Natasha can handle any occasion. She wore a black evening gown, showing her grace and luxury. As the only woman in the Avengers, Natasha's popularity is still good. And the citizens of New York also liked Natasha very much. Facing the media flash, Natasha responded with a smile. She turned her head and communicated with Tony through the headset. Tony, you know I don't like this kind of occasion, but for your sake, give me a car, and spend a boring Christmas Eve. Natasha, I have a lot of cars in my garage, but you chose a TT. Tony, wearing an Iron Man suit, said. Because I'm not as high profile as you. Natasha said while smiling. Originally, it was Iron Man Tony who was invited to watch the show tonight. But a rampage mutant appeared in Florida. The mutant is said to call himself Red Tank. Has the power of the Hulk. Tony traveled to Florida to test improved anti-Hulk armor. And tonight's Christmas Eve performance. It has extraordinary significance for the citizens of New York. Without a single Avenger present, it would have looked very ugly. Natasha had to come up. Oh, do you think that's high profile? That's just my daily life. Tony pouted. Natasha, who was about to continue to scare Tony, saw Charles smile at her, and her face couldn't help but freeze. Tony, I met someone, hang up first. Since Charles smiled at himself. Natasha also felt generously towards Charles. Professor Xavier, I didn't expect to meet on such an occasion. Call me Charles, I'll listen. Gwen said something about you asking her for help. Quote. It was actually Gwen who told herself as a ghost spider. Natasha chuckled in her heart. She looked at Charles puzzled. I always feel that Charles has a sense of déjà vu of an old father who is interested in his daughter's bad girlfriend. But people's own father is on the other side. I mean, if Gwen wants to be a free street hero, I totally agree. But if Fury wants her to enter the Avengers, be bound by various rules like you, and become a professional tool for maintaining the world, I will make S.H.I.E.L.D. look good. Charles's words were very sharp. Natasha didn't know how to answer for a moment. The show is about to start. I hope you will relay my words to Fury. After Charles turned and entered the theater, Natasha woke up like a dream. Take a deep breath. Natasha smiled like nothing had happened. But he thought about Charles's words in his heart. A professional tool for preserving the world. It's really apt. It feels like Fury is using them as tools. One task after another was assigned to them. Yet those secrets of S.H.I.E.L.D. But it was all hidden in Fury's head. There are a lot of meaningless tasks, all part of Fury's grand plan, and Fury will never tell them what that plan is. George on the side felt incredible. There are great doubts about Charles's identity. Who the hell is this person? It is understandable that Charles can get Osborn's appreciation. But why can he still talk to Black Widow Natasha? That's the Avengers. It was he who went to Natasha, and Natasha would probably just be out of procedure to communicate with him about the case. There is nothing more to say beyond the facts of the case. The huge theater of MAG was packed at this time. After a generous speech from the mayor of New York, the theatrical performance officially began. The first performance is a stage play about the alien invasion. Charles did not appreciate this kind of singing and dancing stage play. His fingers lightly tapped his temples, and the power of telepathy came directly to Xavier's Genius Youth School. Teachers and students at the school are celebrating Christmas Eve together. There is a Christmas tree in the school hall, and all kinds of gifts are piled up under the Christmas tree, and the whole school is decorated with a very festive color. Follow the custom of Christmas Eve. Everyone will sing Christmas songs together. Then comes the joyful gift opening session. These gifts were basically prepared by Clarice and Katie, and of course, Charles and Orlo also helped prepare some. On the side of the MAG Theater, after the opera, there is a hymn sung by the choir of the New York church. Right at this moment, suddenly there was a loud bang directly above the stage. Bang! It was like being hit by a heavy cannonball, boulders were scattered, and the choir below screamed in fright. However, these scattered stones did not fall. The red magic was like a pervasive mist of light, lifting all these stones so that they did not fall on the choir. Wanda slowly fell from the sky. She had some difficulty controlling the stones. At this time, Wanda had just awakened her ability, and her use of chaos magic was obviously not proficient enough. Wanda Maximoff. Charles saw Wanda falling from the sky, Wanda wearing a black tube skirt and a small signature red leather jacket on the upper body. Boy, how did Wanda show up in New York? Charles was a little confused. Wanda and her brother Quicksilver are mutants. Baron Strack, one of the leaders of the Hydra, who uses Loki's scepter, the Mind Gem, to activate their abilities. After the Insight Plan, the Avengers realized the existence of Hydra and began to eliminate Hydra around the world. Baron Strack frees Wanda and Quicksilver. That is, the plot of Avengers 2. Not only the Wanda brothers and sisters, but also the desperate Virus Warrior and the Vulture Tums, what a big deal. Charles sensed multiple psychic fluctuations. Black Widow Natasha has pulled out her weapon tied to her thigh at the moment of the mutation to deal with the impending battle. She looked at Charles in the audience. But he found that Charles was indifferent and looked like he didn't want to interfere. What did Fury do to make Charles, who once created the X-Men, not care about anything? Natasha complained to Fury in her heart. Even she didn't find it, and subtly, she changed her opinion of Charles. Charles was not an evil man at all. Like a spring, S.H.I.E.L.D. pressed the X-Men too hard, and it just bottomed out. Miss, what are you? The mayor of New York got up and said. Wanda scanned the front row of seats and did not find Iron Man. Where is Stark? He's not here, he's not showing up tonight. The legislator said. It seems to be looking for Stark, then it has nothing to do with them. But before he could rejoice, he saw a man walk up to the stage and said, Wanda, it doesn't matter if Stark isn't here, if we arrest the people on the list, he will definitely throw himself into the net to find the door. Quote. And her. Wanda points to Pepper. Tony and Pepper's relationship has not yet been officially announced. However, the two often appear together in front of the media. That kind of special relationship between men and women can't hide Wanda, who is also a woman, and she can see that Pepper is Stark's lover. Absorber Creel said it was fine. He issued an order to the group of tombs, and according to the plan, the Vulture Tombs was in charge of the demolition theater and air support. His men arrested people according to the list. Desperate Virus Warriors against New York detectives. Now the places in and out of the Mage Theater have been blocked by his people. Just when it comes to arresting people, Natasha suddenly twisted a man with a Zeteri technology weapon with her legs. The next moment, the two rolled into the crowd. Natasha took the initiative and stunned the man with a heavy punch. Right at this moment, Spider-Gwen swung the spider silk, not knowing where to rush into the field. Her goal is to absorb the human Creel. The thief captures the king first. Gwen obviously understands this. Otherwise, she and Black Widow Natasha would not have won. Especially the girl who looked like a witch. Definitely a ruthless character. However, Gwen still underestimated the absorber Creel. The lower limit of absorbing people is very low and the upper limit is very high. His strength depends on the material he absorbs for transformation. I saw him transformed into Edmund alloy material. Boom. Gwen kicked him, only to make him stagger. What? Gwen was stunned. This person turned into silver white metal in an instant. What's the situation? Without waiting for her to react, what greeted her was a heavy punch that absorbed people. Gwen was shot far away. She used spider silk to stabilize her figure so that she would not smash on the audience. Dare to hit my Gwen. Charles was angry, and his grandmother could endure it, but his uncle couldn't. Originally. He wants to put on a bad spot as a bystander, and the system reward will be treated as a Christmas gift. The problem Gwen was beaten, this rotten reward is not enough. I don't lack this reward. Thinking of this, Charles used the Black Shadow core. Inside the Black Shadow of the theater, shadow-like ninja soldiers continue to emerge. The audience was frightened and screamed. It is to see the absorbers of the terrorist attack, Creel, Scarlet Witch and others, they are not so afraid. Because there are too many ninja soldiers. In a short while, hundreds or thousands of them pop up. Wanda turned her head to look at the absorber, but the absorber shook his head. This is not our people. Needless to say, Wanda already knew, and there were already shadow ninjas who began to attack them. The shadow ninja of the Black Shadow Court uses a variety of weapons, and the flexibility is very high, and there are almost no shortcomings. Vulture Tum's men, after a single blast of several shadow ninjas. The thrown shuriken was directly nailed. Others were stabbed in the throat by ninja knives. It is the desperate virus warriors, who are slashed by one ninja knife after another, and the damage they constantly inflict breaks through the limit of what their bodies can withstand. In the end, the body is like molten slurry, constantly melting and dripping until it turns into a pool of hot substance. When these desperate virus warriors are dying, they also want to die with the Shadow Ninja. As everyone knows, the Shadow Ninja is just a black shadow. Even if they can take a few Shadow Ninjas with them. It had no effect on Charles's vast spiritual power. Wanda constantly unleashes magical attacks, but there is no particularly good way to deal with the endless Shadow Ninjas. Unless it's with stronger magic. But in that case, I am afraid that this theater will not be able to hold up, and many people will die because of it. She just wanted to kill Tony Stark. I don't want to implicate so many innocent people. On the other side, Spider-Gwen saw a shadow ninja popping up. It's really like the cherry blossom ninja in a movie and television drama. Her mind couldn't turn for a moment. Natasha said to her, "Leave the metal man alone, let's find a way to deal with that witch together." Quote. In terms of combat experience, Natasha is richer than Gwen. Absorbing the human Creel, this kind of thing, just looks quite strong. The biggest actual threat is the witch who can attack a wide range and does not know where the upper limit is. Oh. Spider-Gwen answered absent-mindedly. Because she was afraid that something would happen to Charles. After the Shadow Ninja appeared, the theater was completely chaotic. Everyone ran out in a panic. Papa George followed the mayor and seemed to be fine. But she didn't see Charles. Holy Lord, that person must be the Holy Lord. Norman Osborn, who was escorted away by bodyguards, shouted in his heart. If it wasn't for the Holy Lord, how to explain the Shadow Ninja who appeared? This is the dependent of the Holy Lord. Only the Holy Lord has such great and unfathomable power. Wanda, I'll deal with the Shadow Ninja. A voice suddenly appeared in Wanda's ears. It was Quicksilver Pietro. Pietro holds a tungsten steel dagger. He has already seen the shortcomings of the Shadow Ninja, just like the assassin in the game, typical attack high defense low. No, the defense is very low. As long as the damage is almost the same, even if it is not fatal, it can make the Shadow Ninja disappear into a black shadow again. Pietro is nicknamed Quicksilver, and his mutant ability is speed. When the speed of Quicksilver starts, the whole world seems to have slowed down. Wanda turned to look at him. However, in the world of Quicksilver, this action is slowed down hundreds or thousands of times. When you turn your head, the hair is clearly visible. Quicksilver walked up to a Shadow Ninja and slashed the dagger down its throat, followed by the second, third, fourth. The Shadow Ninja who was hit still maintained an offensive posture. Because the speed of Quicksilver has almost reached another dimension. So, in the world of Quicksilver, the speed at which the Shadow Ninja shattered and disappeared was far less fast than the speed at which he reaped. Suddenly, Quicksilver opened his eyes wide, and he saw a light man whose speed was not inferior to him, speeding towards him. It was as if in this stagnant world, only the two of them were unaffected. He wanted to use a dagger against the light man. Who knew that the light man flew a kick, and the speed was in the limit speed, and I don't know how many times faster. So much so that Quicksilver can only see the afterimage. Bang! This is Charles's lightspeed kick developed using Shining Fruit, not a rookie like Quicksilver, who can only initially use his own speed. This kick kicked Quicksilver back onto the stage. Of course, Charles gathered most of his strength, or he would have kicked Quicksilver to death. His physical fitness is not much stronger than ordinary people. The type that can be sent away with a shuttle bullet. Then, everyone heard the sound of Quicksilver crashing into people. Immediately after that, he found that the Shadow Ninja in the audience had all dissipated. Wanda exclaimed. Then he noticed the person who sent his brother flying, a light man condensed with yellow light. At this time, there are a total of 3 forces on the stage. Wanda, absorbing people Creel and others. Natasha and Gwen the Spider form an alliance. Charles, who became the Man of Light. Sir, we can join forces to save everyone. Natasha tells Charles that Black Widow never gives up the opportunity to woo allies. She was still not sure whether the light people in the field were friends or foes. So, she used the phrase to save everyone. Instead of defeating these scoundrels. Anytime. There's always the right thing to do. This is the wisdom of Black Widow Natasha. Charles ignored her, and at the moment Charles was thinking about something. What to do with Wanda and Quicksilver. It is impossible for S.H.I.E.L.D. to catch it. After all, Wanda is so beautiful and in such a good shape that it can be developed. Besides, chaos magic is a power of the same level as the power of the Phoenix. At the very least, it's a multiverse level. Of course, take it by your side. If you can't stop the Sentinel plan, you need to unite all powerful forces against the Sentinel. This is a backhand. As for where to send Wanda and Quicksilver first. Charles thought for a moment and thought that it should be placed in Xavier Genius Jr. School first. While he was thinking, Scorpion Gagun pounced from somewhere and backstabbed him. Gagun's scorpion suit is light and dexterous. The joints are all sharp long spines. This suit is very suitable for close combat, and I saw Scorpion Gagun stab Charles in the back more than a dozen times in succession. It feels like a piece of light penetrating. Not an entity. Scorpion Gagun was stunned. Charles showed no mercy to the guy who sneaked up on him, and he threw Gagun to the ground, stretched out his 5 fingers, and a yellow laser burst out from the fingertips. Swish. Laser shots light Gatling heavy firepower. The stage floor was full of smoke and dust. When Charles stopped, not to mention Gagun, his suit was basically bombarded into slag. Gagun, probably already gasified. Seeing such a brutal side of the light man, Spider-Gwen subconsciously distanced himself from him. Quicksilver, who woke up slowly, was almost frightened and fainted again. Fortunately, Hikaru just kicked him. Rao is so. Quicksilver also felt that he had broken at least 2 ribs. Charles didn't bother to deal with Tomb's men, or the desperate virus warriors. His targets are Wanda and Quicksilver. However, Charles is not so good at talking to those who stand in his way. Absorber Creel rushed up without fear of death. With a light speed kick, followed by a laser ray, the powerful impact knocked him from the stage to the backstage of the theater. However, the absorber quickly crawled out of the ruins. The strength of the Edmund alloy made Charles's attack impossible to deal actual damage. Anyway, lightspeed kicking and laser light will not work. It's like one thing gram one thing. Black Shadow Core makes Wanda difficult to parry, even if the opponent is the Hulk. It is estimated that it can be consumed by relying on the tactics of the Sea of People. The ability of Quicksilver, complete the Black Shadow Core. Charles uses the Shining Fruit. The natural fruit is immune to physical damage, plus terrifying speed and ranged attacks. Iron Man, Team America, Black Panther type of players, no matter how many they come, they will abuse casually. Just a pair of high defense types. It's stretched. Of course. If Charles really wants to kill the absorber Creel, there is a way. A telepathic casually erases his consciousness. or the Avadaso curse. It is also possible. At this time, Charles did not use these two abilities, and he had more convenient means. Metal control. I saw Charles press his hand to the ground. The absorber feels like being attracted by the strong magnetism of the ground, constantly falling downward. 1 basement level. 2nd basement floor. After the 2nd basement floor, it continues down. Boom boom. I don't know how deep I was pressed into the ground by Charles before stopping. After solving the absorber, Charles turns into a light to avoid Wanda's magic, and he takes Wanda and Quicksilver out of the theater together. Where no one was, a phantom transfiguration was used. Go straight to the underground base of Xavier's gifted junior school. I'll trouble you to stay in this place first. Charles transforms from light to entity, and at the same time a telepathic power descends on Wanda and Quicksilver. I want them to fall asleep. Right at this moment. A terrifying flame appeared in Jean Grey's mind. Inside the flames it looked like a black phoenix. The flames became more and more fierce. The black phoenix led the neck to scream. Jean only felt like she was going into boundless darkness. She panicked and hid in the bathroom and locked herself inside. Everything in the bathroom is in a superposition of disintegration and recovery due to the influence of the piano's ability. Charles looked up. Sensing another powerful energy in the academy, there were faint signs of awakening. This is Jean. His face froze. Boy. Phoenix Force Riot, right. The power of the Phoenix, the power of chaos and the power of the Goblin are one of the 3 ancient forces of the universe. And the power of the Phoenix is the most primitive life and emotional force in the universe. When Jean awakens this power, she causes great damage, causing her parents to die in the power. This is the reason why Jean gave birth to the second, Black Phoenix, personality. The Black Phoenix personality is most in line with the original emotional power of the Phoenix power. It made the Dark Phoenix more powerful than ever. If left to the Black Phoenix to destroy, there will be incalculable consequences. So, Charles once sealed the Dark Phoenix personality with a psychic cage. Quote. At this moment, when the power of the Phoenix senses the power of chaos, the instinct of the most primordial power of the universe, let it ignite fighting spirit. It's like one mountain doesn't allow 2 tigers. With the outbreak of the power of the Phoenix, the Black Phoenix personality gradually awakened. The mental cage set by Charles also began to show signs of collapse. This is why I can't put my eggs in one basket. After Charles figured out the reason, he was a little speechless. Because the 2 forces will instinctively confront. The power of chaos is good to say. Wanda can control her power. The power of the Phoenix will revive the Black Phoenix personality, and it will be an absolute disaster. Even if it is not completely the power of the Phoenix, it can also reach the level of a single universe. On the other hand, looking at his own strength, even if he gets energy absorption, Shining Fruit, Voldemort template through swinging. At best, it is the quasi-heavenly father level. Not as old as Odin or Gu. Face the monolithic universe level Black Phoenix. There is no chance of winning at all. Charles had to transfer the sleeping Wanda and Quicksilver again and put them in the psychological clinic first. Broadway, Mage Theater. The Vulture Tums is tightly wrapped in cobwebs. In addition to Wanda and Quicksilver, who were taken by Charles, only Creel, the Absorber, escaped arrest. Dozens of meters underground, he transformed himself into the same material as dirt. This is more conducive to digging holes in the soil. When S.H.I.E.L.D. took control of the scene and tried to dig the Absorber Creel out of the soil, he found that he had already run. That's the next story. Gwen changed back into her performance clothes, and she saw Charles outside, and quickly threw herself into Charles's arms. Charles, it's great that you're okay. Gwen said happily. I forgot that the relationship between the two has not yet reached this point. Mainly when the crowd fled the theater, there was a stampede and things like being injured by stray bullets. She didn't see Charles, and she was inevitably worried. Gwen, what's wrong with your face? Charles reached out and touched the bruise on Gwen's cheek, which had been beaten by Creel, the Absorber. A superhuman physique is strong. Change to a normal person, the bones are broken. Gwen did not resist the hand handed over by Charles, and said aggrievedly, when I ran away in the background, I tripped and fell. Quote. Next to the ambulance, George put the dean of the House of Representatives, who was almost 80 years old, into the ambulance. The old dean was not injured. But maybe for reasons of fear, pulled. It's literally pulling. If this is known by the media, I don't know what it will be said about. Therefore, the ambulance had to pull him away and send him directly home. George turned his head to look at his daughter in the crowd, and when he found that his daughter and Charles were not my daughter, he felt so sad. His little padded jacket doesn't care about himself anymore. Next, the attack on the New York Mage Theater spread throughout Eagle Sauce. On Christmas Eve, the theater filled with thousands of powerful and elite people in the upper class of New York was terrorized, and it is strange that this kind of thing can be hidden. At least more than 50 casualties. One of the most important is the predators who shorted the Asian economy in the 90s. Fortunately, the stock market is closed on Christmas. However, it is foreseeable that the first trading day after the holiday will be very bleak. I haven't been in New York for a day, and it's such a big mess. However, I still want to say, is New York abandoned by God? Tony returns to Stark Tower, and the robotic arm helps him remove his suit. Pepper got up from behind her desk and looked at Tony. Tony, one of the attackers is looking for you. Looking for me. Tony's face showed suspicion, and he said strangely, could it be that I caused trouble before? Quote. All right. From Obadiah the Iron Overlord, to the Whiplash, to Killian. Tony feels that the rest of his life is wiping his ass for the first half of his life. What a disgusting metaphor. Little Pepper was also unsure, and said, I don't know, but that girl has another very fast ability, and everyone has been rescued. Quote. It may have been captured. Accompanied by the news of the attack on the Theater of Mage. The mysterious Flash Man also appeared on the front pages of major media. Everyone was wondering if this Flash Man who suddenly appeared was another new vigilante. Natasha, what do you think of that Flash Man? Is he a new vigilante, or a villain? Fury asked Natasha, who was back in the Tricurved Wing building. Flash Man, that's a really ugly name. Natasha couldn't help but complain after hearing the name. As for whether it is friend or foe, she cannot give a reasonable answer. Supposedly, because Flash Man appeared and saved everyone, he should be a friend. But he took the witch and another person, which is difficult to judge. Fury complained about Natasha's name, Flash Man, saying, although it looks like a non-physical light, you can clearly see the hair, don't you? One of our agents said, people with hair look more like people. Quote. Coulson had a bitter face. It was this sentence that he was deducted for half a year's bonus because he walked into the office first with his left foot. Texas, the ancestral home of Hank the Beast. Charles temporarily requisitioned here. Anyway, it has been abandoned for many years, and no one has lived in it for a long time. Because Texas is close to Mexico, this place is not particularly safe. The advantage is that the people are fierce. Both SHIELD and the CIA are weak in this state. Wanda and Quicksilver followed Charles, looking up at the dilapidated old mansion. After they learned that Charles had no malicious intent, the twins had let their guard down. Mainly have not experienced social danger, the twins are still relatively simple. Baron Strack is fooling this aspect, mainly driving Wanda and Quicksilver with hatred, but there are actually many flaws. None of them require psychiatrist guidance. Just calm down and they can figure it out for themselves. Just like a knife seller. Someone bought his knife to do bad things. Do you want to go to the knife seller to take revenge? Are we going to live here in the future? Quicksilver curiously touched the globe in the living room with his hand, and the globe that was overwhelmed by time, one end fell off, anti-wolf, rolled from the table to the ground. Apparently this place is really old enough to fall into disrepair. Quicksilver was about to say something when Wanda tugged at his arm. Let's just clean it. This place is very good, isn't it? Thank you, Charles, for providing us with a place to stay. Wanda's character is like that. It's a bit of a receptivity. That's it in Avengers. She rarely expresses what she likes and doesn't like. Anyway, how to arrange, she will do it. It doesn't matter what you like. But the hemp rope is specially selected and broken, and bad luck is specifically looking for the bitter man. As a child, Wanda lost her parents. Reduced to Hydra's combat tool. Just seeing the light of a new life, Quicksilver Pietro left her forever. Out of the shadow of losing your brother. have a relationship. Vision died at the hands of Thanos. The Heavenly Sword Bureau even disassembled him. In Westview Township, Wanda uses the power of chaos magic to create a happy life. Finally, for the people who are controlled by the whole town, choose to watch Vision and the two children disappear with their own eyes. Tragedy continues to play out on her, eventually causing Wanda's emotional breakdown and complete blackening after receiving the Book of Darkness. Cleaning is actually very simple. Charles waved his finger lightly and said, "Recovery as before." Quote, "I saw that all the dilapidated things in the room began to be constantly restored. A bookcase that has been broken. The broken wood chips were returned to their places, and the books scattered on the ground were rearranged in the bookcase. The collapsed wooden staircase was leveled again. The globe that had just been touched off by Quicksilver flew back onto the stand. Everything in this old mansion is flying back and forth in an orderly manner." The magical picture in front of them made the twins unbelievable and breathtaking. "Wanda, this is the power of magic, and your chaos magic can do the same. We can use magic to facilitate our lives, not the simplest use to flatten something," Charles said to Wanda. "Wanda, sorry. Pinch something, isn't that what she does? What a shame." At this moment, Charles held Wanda's cold little hand. Wanda's body tightened, but he felt the temperature of Charles's palm, but he did not take it back. "Here, you can try to feel the trajectory of magic. Clean up." After the room was restored, Charles used a cleaning charm to clean up the dust of the years. The power of this white magic comes from eternity. Presumably, the eternal boss will not care too much about cleaning with magic. Charles temporarily placed Wanda and Quicksilver in Texas. At the same time, a plan was made. It is to find something for the twins to do a little, and put out the reward for the white prostitutes by the way. Certainly before doing so, one more thing. He had to make a trip to the 3 Curved Wing building in Washington. Thinking of this, Charles arrived in Washington with a phantom transfiguration. Although flying at the speed of shining fruit can also be reached quickly, it is certainly not as easy and convenient as magic. The magic power of this phantom transfiguration magic was borrowed from the Emperor of Vishan. Take magic to catch up with your own way, thinking that Emperor Vishan is not a stingy god. Fury was reviewing the documents he was visiting on his desk. It is a review of the personnel list of the satellite launch program. It looks like just an ordinary satellite launch. Its significance is known to only a few people throughout S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Security Council. The launch of this satellite is related to the entire Insight plan behind. Therefore, an ordinary list of launch missions requires Fury to look at it personally. Right at this moment, Fury suddenly looked out the window. "I saw a yellow light appear outside the floor-to-ceiling window." The next moment, the light converged in his office. Looking at the intact window, Fury frowned and asked, "How did you get in?" Quote, "All the glass of the 3 Curved Wing building. They are the most expensive bulletproof glass ordered from the military-industrial group. As we all know, glass does not block the propagation of light," Charles said. Fury stopped talking, secretly assessing the meaning of this sentence. Glass cannot block the propagation of light. But people who can block the entity. Unless this flash person can be completely as ubiquitous as light. Very scary ability. Squeak. Hill pushed the door into the office, and she came to report to Fury. After seeing the Flashman in the office, Hill was a well-trained agent and pulled out his weapon in less than a second. Fury made a stop gesture at her. He said, "Hill, put the weapon away. I think Mr. Flashman must have something to find me. You can make us 2 cups of coffee if you can." Quote. "Director Fury, you don't need to test me, that doesn't make sense." Charles laughed. "What does it mean to make 2 cups of coffee?" Fury is still evaluating his abilities. Seeing that the intention was recognized, Fury did not care, and the dark face had always used to hide emotions. "Mr. Flashman, S.H.I.E.L.D. wants to commend you for what you did in New York. If you didn't take 2 people. Quote. To be honest, I didn't find their identities in the S.H.I.E.L.D. system. I am here for them, and I need S.H.I.E.L.D. to revoke their wanted and get 2 identification documents by the way," Charles said. For people with superpowers, it doesn't matter if they have proof of identity. Wolverine Rogan's old-fashioned identification card dates back to the Vietnam War. But for people, it's very important. This means whether you can integrate into the social population. Charles didn't want Wanda to be a withdrawn, detached person. That was not conducive to her control of emotions. Avengers made such a mistake. The Avengers base, where the environment is superior, the scenery is beautiful, and the equipment is complete, but it lacks the human touch. For Tony, Iron Man is work and Stark is life. For Team USA, it is difficult for him to fit into this era. But his Iron will not bother him in this regard. Natasha and Hawkeye, as secret agents, are old churros. Only Wanda is a little girl. All of them ignore Wanda's need for affection. Fury said with a cold face, "What if I say no?" Quote. Charles expected him to say this. "Do you know how many kilometers per second the speed of light is, Director Fury?" Without waiting for Fury to answer, Charles said to himself. Light can travel at 300,000 kilometers per second, while the circumference of the Earth's equator is 40,000 kilometers. In other words, I can go around the equator 7.5 times in 1 second. Quote. Then, ask Director Fury to calculate how long it will take me to kill the people of Washington. Charles was slow and flat. But the most bland language speaks the most contrarian words. Hill felt like a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, presented in front of his eyes. A bone-chilling chill spread throughout his body. Fury's expressionless face was finally not expressionless. He stood up angrily. His body trembled slightly, but he did not dare to say another word. Because he has seen the abilities of the Flash Man. Under the speed of light, let alone attack. Even if you walk through Independence Avenue without any scruples, you don't know how many people will die. To be a super capable person without the constraints of law, morality and conscience. Even Fury, who is the king of agents, can only bow his head and submit. Well, identification is not difficult, but to revoke the wanted, I need time to convince the Security Council. An hour, 2 things I'll give you an hour of. Charles didn't give Fury a chance to bargain. Shit takes time. Bruce Banner can do much more damage than twins. SHIELD is just as capable of pacifying it. An hour later, Charles got his identity from Fury, and it was like a ray of light disappearing instantly. Speed is not to mention that it cannot be captured by the naked eye. Even the surveillance can't be filmed. The speed of light propagation has exceeded the limits of monitoring equipment. Hill, please contact the Icebox prison, I need a statistic on the abilities of mutants. Fury said after withdrawing his gaze. The Icebox prison is Eagle Sauce's largest mutant prison. Jailed are all mutant criminals. Because the mutant registration bill has not yet been introduced, the most detailed statistics on the abilities of mutants are one is the Mutant Research Institute, and the other is the prison. Hill nodded, then asked, do you think that Flash Man will be a mutant? Such a powerful mutant, he is at least alpha level, comparable to Professor X and Magneto. Quote. Personal intuition, but I expect him to better not. If that's the case, the problem of mutants is even greater. I don't know what step Dr. Worthington Kurd's mutant healing potion has been studied. Charles first returned to Hell's Kitchen, opened his phone, and saw Gwen complaining to himself about being reported by George about the tour. That's right. In order to keep Gwen away from the scumbags, George quoted Gwen a high-priced, 15-day group tour of Europe. After returning, the State Imperial University just opened. Pity the hearts of the parents of the world. Charles shook his head and shook the thought out of his mind. Poor fart. Who will pity themselves? Will there be Venice on this trip? Charles asked, typing. After receiving Gwen's affirmative reply, Charles fell into deep thought. Does this start the Mysterio plot? Forget it, leave this alone. Mysterio doesn't threaten Gwen anyway. Besides, he was still standing behind Gwen, and when Ji Yuyi and Odin didn't make a move, the others hit casually. After a few words to Gwen to stay safe, Charles contacted Jessica again to ask if she had time to travel together. Jessica knew he was a mutant thing. It doesn't hurt to know a little more. At this time, Jessica is in Brooklyn, and she is protecting her sister Tracy. Tracy is a stand-up comedian who recently received death threats for satirizing people of the same romance. Hi Charles, I'm in a boring talk show theater. I don't know what's so nice about this thing. Jessica clutched the microphone with her hand and whispered. Now Jessica protects Tracy 24 hours a day, including her daily performances. I think a lot of people like to say sarcasm in a humorous tone, but I prefer a talk show with satirical farming tools. Ironic farming tools. Then it's not as simple as receiving death. Quote. Jessica rolled her eyes when Charles asked if she had time. Jessica certainly wanted to go. But this side really can't go away. That death threat didn't look like a joke. Because there were stand-up comedians last year, they received the same death threats. He was later stabbed to death at home. That case became an unsolved case, and the Brooklyn Police Department has not solved it to this day. After taking care of things on New York's side, Charles uses the Phantom Transfiguration and comes to Texas again. Wanda sensed that Charles was back and rushed down the stairs happily. Charles, I thought you wouldn't be here in a few days. Wanda, wearing a red dress, has a happy face. She already knew that Charles was the headmaster of a mutant school and opened a psychology clinic in Hell's Kitchen, and it was normal for him to not have time for her. How come? Don't forget that I promised to take you on a trip. You used chaos magic to make a vigilante. Great way. Quote. Charles discovers the magical energy flowing through the air. Apparently, Wanda created it after watching him use magic. It's a blessed creativity. When the plasticity of chaos magic, combined with this creativity, God knows how many things can be made. With Charles's approval, Wanda almost jumped with joy. This kind of praise and recognition, which is not mixed with anything, is the first time Wanda has experienced it after losing her parents. She was with Baron Strack. It has also been praised. And that kind of praise, she could feel it. It was Baron Strack out of appreciation for a weapon. Time came to the next day. Charles prepared an RV and put Quicksilver Pietro in charge of driving. Although Pietro does not have a driver's license. But in a country where Eagle Sauce is known as a wheel, it is really not an exaggeration to say that everyone can drive. With Baron Strack, Quicksilver drives several combat vehicles, including tanks. Driving an RV doesn't bother him at all. As for Charles and Wanda, of course, they sat leisurely in the back, drinking coffee and chatting and enjoying the comfort of the journey. The first stop on their trip was an orphanage. Northwest from Texas, RVs soon entered New Mexico. A small town called Andrews. At an orphanage on the outskirts of town, Charlton uses an invisibility cloak to take Wanda into the orphanage. The two men are wrapped in cloaks of invisibility. The bodies can only be attached together. After all, this invisibility cloak has to wrap two people, and the space is very cramped. Wanda sniffed the nice aroma on Charles. Her heart was like a deer, she kept beating, and she felt that her breathing was a little heavy. In this orphanage, there are two mutant children, both of whom are bullied by other children. Because mutant kids wear mutant ability suppression collars. Even if you are bullied by other children and stoned, you cannot use the mutant ability. When Wanda saw this scene, she was so angry that she couldn't do it. Charles, aren't mutants also human? Why are they beating mutants? Wanda asked in a low voice. Because of human nature, it is not necessarily necessary to unite against the strong, but it will unite against the weak. Of course, the law restricts such behavior. Quote. But in the orphanage, who cares about these children who have no family? What's more, the target of their bullying is mutants. Is incapacity a weakling? I saw one of the mutants, little Fatty, although his head was smashed and bleeding, he still picked up a stone and threw himself at the person who attacked him. A human child was injured by him. After a while, the nuns of the orphanage heard the cries and they rushed out of the church. When I saw a human child covering his injured hand. Without asking, he slapped the little fat man indiscriminately. Ignoring his still bleeding forehead. The nun also uttered vicious curses. You satanic elects should have let you die in the stinking gutter in the first place. The little fat man didn't say a word. He had long been accustomed to this unfair treatment. Wanda lifted her cloak of invisibility, and she couldn't help but shoot at these nuns. Even if a child bullies a mutant child unscrupulously, she can't bear it. Not to mention these nuns. Bang, bang, bang. I saw that under the chaos magic, these nuns were either slammed on the trunk of the tree or hit the wall. In the blink of an eye, the three nuns fell to the ground, letting out a wail one after another. Sound attracts more people. Wanda was not used to them, and everyone was knocked to the ground by her, and almost every single one of them was broken. Even the children, she taught a lesson. With all this done, she and Charles took the two young children back to the RV. Because he watched the whole battle and did not do it himself, Charles was rewarded with a bronze treasure chest. After opening, it is a hacker variant ability. Charles only needs to touch the USB port of the computer with his finger to hack into the computer at any time. It is still more convenient to have this ability. You know, in the current era, there are surveillance cameras everywhere, and Charles can use the ability to hack into the network and clear videos about himself. Charles, one of them is called Jack and the other is called Russell. Jack's ability mimics, like a chameleon, he can passively adapt to his surroundings to conjure up a corresponding protective color. Russell's ability is flames, and his hands can release flames. Back in the car, Wanda said to Charles. She had removed the inhibition collars of both of them, and after removing the collars, Jack was out of control and his body color became the same as his surroundings. At close range, this mimicry, which can only change color, has little effect. If it is far away, it is really difficult to find. I don't know how many times stronger than the jungle camouflage of special forces. However, because he could not actively control it, his ability was the weakest epsilon level among mutants. As for the other one named Russell, he is a fierce man. Known as Fire Fist, it belongs to the beta class. Because the ability can generate flames on its own, it is even more powerful than John the Burning Man. Inside Deadpool 2, Russell is the villain of the future, and the Cable crosses from the future in order to kill him. From the kind of ruthlessness just now. It is indeed a ruthless character. Charles took Wanda on a trip, originally just to cultivate Wanda's sense of mission to protect mutants. A great thinker said, "A life with a sense of mission is the greatest work of mankind." When she has this sense of mission, Wanda can better control her emotions. Although the power of chaos is not as easy as the power of the Phoenix, it is easy to affect people's emotions. But this is the oldest force in the universe. Like a teenager who suddenly gains immeasurable wealth and boundless power. It's easy to hold on. But what I didn't expect was a casual trip. You can also find a very fierce mutant. This was a bonus. Using the Phantom Transfiguration, Charles sent the two back to Xavier's School for Gifted Youth, leaving Storm Girl in charge of arranging their accommodation and classes. When I returned to the RV, Clarice also followed. She drove the portal into the RV and jumped in. Charles was surprised. "Clarice, this is impossible, you can't locate my location so accurately." "Charles, your magic will produce a spatial fluctuation, so I can locate it, this is what I newly learned." Clarice raised her delicate little face and said very proudly. "You are such a bull, does your family know?" "Oh, I'm your family. That's okay." Eastern Heijo, a backward country. Backwardness and barrenness are the main themes here. For example, the country's largest capital does not even have a decent hotel, let alone facilities such as an airport. If you want to come here from far away, you must first fly to the airport of a neighboring country. Then take a bus out of the country. Finally get into the country, very dilapidated operating vehicles, to reach your destination. Now, Magneto Eric is in this place. He followed Charles's advice and did not stay in Eagle Sauce to continue fighting with the federal government. Instead, he chose to control a small black state. Make yourself the new leader. Build a mutant nation. A small black state like this, Eric can control at will. But he can't see it, it's too backward. For mutants to develop, I don't know how many years it will take. Boss, I found that hidden place, you should go and check it out. A person suddenly appeared in Magneto's room. A two-headed mutant is brought by the Night Stalker. Nightcrawler is controlled by Stryker to assassinate the president. After Stryker finished, the Night Stalker was out of control. Magneto Eric finds him and makes him work for himself. As for the mutant with two heads, it is a mutant with a strong Morlock organization. He nicknamed the Ogre, not because he really eats people. Rather, in a Dota game, there is an Ogre Mage who has two heads like the Ogre Mage. The Ogre's abilities are telepathic remote sensing and induction force field. He can act as a super powerful bioradar in a large space. Eric after coming to this backward country. Hear some legends about the mysterious country. So, he sent ogres and nightcrawlers to find the place. You guys did a great job, it looks like it's going to be a very nice place. Eric smiled and let the Night Stalker catch him. The next moment, they came to a country hidden in a light curtain. In the distance, buildings full of sci-fi colors rise from the ground. There are also mysterious flying machines swimming in the sky. This refreshed Eric's three views. In the land of Black State, there is such a developed country. It's just like an alien civilization. Outsiders, stop, you have stepped into the sacred land of Wakanda. You will be greeted by the trial of Wakanda. A flying machine spotted them. The weapons on the flying machine were aimed at the three of Eric. It seems that no matter how powerful a civilization is, it is still inseparable from its dependence on metal. Eric waved his hand gently. The flying machine is like a baseball that has been bounced off, crashing in a parabola. This move is tantamount to declaring war on Wakanda. Unhurried, Eric said to the Night Stalker, "Go and bring Raven and them, and the Earth Beast, when it is time for him to show his might." Quote. Let him bring my army to this country. The Night Stalker returned soon. There is a limit to his abilities, and he can only take up to 4 people at a time. The 4 people brought this time are the most brave and good at fighting around Eric. Witch Raven. Death Woman Yuriko Koyama. Toad Man. Doppelgangers. Eric, this is truly a magical country. Ruiwan saw the scene in the distance and said sincerely. Yes, but my intuition tells me that Charles knows this place, so he asked me to go to the Black State to establish a mutant country. Eric said. Raven nodded. With the amplification of the brainwave intensifier, his telepathy can cover the whole world, and he really should know here. At this time, in the city of Wakanda, dozens of flying machines roared like a swarm of bees. For these flying machines, Eric opened his arms and slowly rose his figure. Soon it reached a height at level with the aircraft. How he flew, it's not scientific. Wakanda Palace Control Room. Princess Su Rui looked at the picture on the video with a look of disbelief. Someone with their own ability to break away from gravity. Like Thor, the Avengers, god of thunder. Is he an Asgardian god? Magneto Eric Lanchel, the most fearsome mutant in the world. T'Challa, who is still the prince, said. Wakanda has the most advanced technology in the world, and although it implements a closed-door policy, it is not closed to outside information. At this time, under Eric's control of electromagnetism, all the screens in Wakanda were his pictures. Your country will be ruled by mutants, your technology will be owned by mutants, and mutants will make merciful choices for those who choose to submit. Arrogant mutants, Wakanda has never been threatened by anyone. Above the throne, the old king in his 60s, with white sideburns and weather-beaten, said angrily. He began to give orders for full-scale combat. If it is the invasion of the most terrifying mutants in the world, it is not against ordinary arms traffickers, and the Kingdom Patrol alone cannot solve the problem. Border guards, Kingdom guards and guards are needed to fight together. The big war is on the verge. Thundered. When Wakanda chose to fight in full force, on Eric's side, a mound suddenly puffed up in the ground. When the mound cracked, a large number of mutants sprang up inside. There is not one, but as many as 7 such mounds have appeared in succession. Hundreds of mutants were transported here. This number is a number of mutants who can fight, not all mutants led by Eric. Most of them belong to the Morlock organization. Earth Beast, good job. The boss said that your abilities should be displayed in the outside world, not in the sewers of Washington. Toad said to one of the last dwarf mutants to appear. The Earth Beast was born an ugly dwarf. His ability can transport living and non-living things underground in large quantities. Inferior to the Night Stalker in speed and agility. But in terms of quantity, it is incomparable to the Night Stalker. The Earth Beast grinned. Not only did he look ugly, he couldn't even speak. Most of the Morlock organization is one of these alienated, or hugely flawed mutants. It was abandoned by human society at a very early age. Midair. Eric pushed forward with both hands, and all the flying machines creaked, even if they were made of vibranium, but in the face of Magneto's power, they were still destroyed. So S.H.I.E.L.D. has developed a lot of plastic weapons against Eric. Wakanda has no research on this. It was too late to hold Buddha's feet temporarily. I saw Eric jerk, and all the aircraft were scrapped and crashed. Air battlefield, Wakanda is vulnerable. The troops on the ground were also defeated. After all, although Wakanda is technologically advanced, it can be self-sufficient, which lacks competition. Without competition, there is no driving force for development. The Wakanda people are still accustomed to fighting with cold weapons. However, except for the Black Panther, all Wakanda people are just ordinary people. How can they fight hundreds of mutants? To know that a mutant Namo can enter and exit Wakanda as if it were no man's land. Forcefully killed the old queen on the territory of Wakanda. In the field, the doppelganger alone is equivalent to 1,000-strong death commando. All of them are exactly the same people, armed with assault rifles, fearless to rush to the front. As for what the doppelganger is doing, chat with a mutant girl in the back. A mutant nicknamed the Winged Demon with a soft membrane of flesh under her arms. When her arms are spread, she finds that her arms have 3 joints. The arm span, or it can also be said that the wingspan is close to 4 meters. This wing gives her the ability to fly like a bat. When she fluttered her wings and flew, Death Girl and Raven grabbed her ankles left and right, and just like that, they directly crossed the obstacles and flew towards the Wakanda palace. They need to end this battle as soon as possible. After all, Wakanda's weapon is the mutant's weapon. The resources of Wakanda are the resources of mutants. So you can't consume too much in this war. The old king looked out from the palace, and it was a one-sided massacre. Wakanda, who has been comfortable for too many years, simply can't fight the mutants who come out of the sewers and yearn for a new home. No one likes a stinking, dark environment in the sewers. When Magneto Eric told them, he will get them back on the ground, back in the sun, and can take a big breath of fresh air, when they believe and join the Brotherhood of Mutants. Now, Eric tells them that the rich country in front of them will be the new home of mutants. There is no one who does not fight for this sacrifice of life. Because even if they die in battle, their next generation will not have to survive like they once did, like rats in the sewers. At this time, there are already quite a few mutants storming the palace. The old king knew that the fall of Wakanda was a foregone conclusion, and he wanted T'Challa to take the heart-shaped grass and the panther suit with him. Know that the panther is the guardian of this country. When Black Panthers will inheritors have lost hope and no longer protect the country, the battle is meaningless. Magneto Eric came over the capital, and he controlled a large warplane to smash into the palace. The wings of the fighters rushed directly at the old kings and them. Bang! After the violent explosion, the king and queen of Wakanda were killed. Su Rui was also seriously injured. T'Challa fled to the hangar with Su Rui and wanted to leave Wakanda in a flying machine, but she did not know that the Death Woman was waiting for them. Eric's order not to allow any Wakanda to flee. Seeing this, T'Challa took the ring and equipped the panther suit. But even the panther suit could not stop the claws of the Death Woman, and one scar after another appeared on T'Challa's body. Even if T'Challa wounds the dead woman, the latter can also recover quickly, which is the same unique recovery ability as Wolverine and Saber-Toothed Tiger. In the end, the future Black Panther T'Challa hates under the claws of the Death Woman. There is also the Panther after T'Challa, and Princess Su Rui also fell under her paws. Such a record can be said to be the MVP of the whole game. Magneto Eric takes Wakanda in a blitzkrieg. The entire battle did not exceed 2 hours in total. Wakanda's defensive barrier, in addition to generating an illusory light curtain, can also shield all electromagnetic signals and satellite signals. So much so that this war, no one in the outside world knows. Eric then transferred all the mutants to Wakanda, a process that didn't alarm anyone. It wasn't until the next day that Team America and Hawkeye, who were in charge of surveillance, discovered that the mutant was missing. That's more than 1,000 mutants. Disappeared without a trace. You know, when they learned that Eric was going to take the small country and establish the mutant country. They thought that what Eric was going to capture was the country they were in. As a result, all mutants now seem to have evaporated from the world. In desperation, the American team had to notify Fury. Fury suddenly felt incredulous. Could it be that Eric of Magneto is back in Eagle Sauce? Captain Rogers, it looks like you and Barton can come back. What about Eric? Magneto didn't care about him. Team America said depressedly. No, I made adjustments to the plan for mutants. We need to be ready for all-out war. Stark is already working on the anti-magnetic field suit, as well as the mind shield helmet, and after Eric's arrest, the shield. Academy of Sciences studied his helmet. With the existing technology, we can make it, mainly because the material is relatively rare. Fury only partially informed. In addition to what he said, there is the mutant antidote being developed by Worthington's lab. The Insight program that SHIELD is preparing to carry out. Project Insight could improve algorithms to target mutants. And the final killer app, the Sentinel robot made by Trask Industries. According to Fury's current thinking, he needs to postpone the Insight program and wait for good news from Worthington's lab. This makes it possible to get an antidote through mutants. Soldiers do not bloody blades, first solve most of the mutants. For the remaining mutant diehards, use the Insight project to eliminate them. As for the last bit, the mutants who narrowly escaped Project Insight. That's SHIELD and the Avengers alive. On the highway where vehicles are scarce. Quicksilver was driving the RV and heading to Louisiana. The state's racial discrimination has always been the most serious problem in Eagle Sauce. Probably the reason for this, inheritance. Louisiana, when it comes to mutants, is also one of the harshest states. A civilian group called the Purifiers, formed spontaneously by local residents, attacks all mutants. If mutants dare to fight back, that would be met with even more violent retaliation. The state government will also personally deal with mutants. Mutants who inadvertently use their abilities to cause damage to public property can be sentenced to 10 years in prison if tried in Louisiana courts. Clarice used her ability to run to the RV, not to cling to Charles. She just hoped that Charles would save her netizens. That's right. It's netizens. A mutant netizen whose screen name is Polaris. As far as Clarice knows, Polaris belongs to a mutant conservation group. They are in Louisiana, protecting persecuted mutants. In a recent operation, Polaris was arrested, and the court sentenced her to up to 50 years in prison for her crimes. It's so abominable. For protecting mutants destroying several police cars, he was sentenced to 50 years in prison. Wanda said indignantly. It's simply sensational. The judge's sentence is so severe, no one has yet objected. It can be seen that the mutants in Louisiana have been completely trampled under the feet of humans. In comparison, mutants in other regions just live worse. It has not been so brazenly persecuted. It is said that when the clearer organization deals with mutants, it causes casualties among mutants, and does not need to bear any responsibility for this. Clarice said. These were all told to her by Polaris before. Wanda felt incredible. Isn't Eagle Sauce the most focused on human rights? Can you kill people casually under the guise of dealing with mutants? Charles shook his head and said, it's no different from going to a butcher shop under the guise of vegetarianism. Quote. The so-called focus on human rights is just a story told by those in power, because it can get more votes. Louisiana uses this harsh approach against mutants, and apparently, it's the members of the state legislature who are currying favor with the majority. Wanda doesn't see things as thoroughly as Charles. She just thought it was ridiculous. Deal with mutants and please the majority. What are the human rights advocated? Pietro parked. It looks like the Louisiana Mutant Protection Organization, ready to do it on the escort road. Charles used his telepathic ability to discover that there were many powerful mutants hidden in the nearby section. So he told Quicksilver Pietro to stop and wait and see. Louisiana's Mutant Conservation Group, led by a mutant nicknamed Thunderbird. Thunderbird John Orer. His abilities are mainly strength, speed and super hearing. In addition to the Thunderbird, the core members of this conservation organization are mainly Eclipse, Marcos, Sweet Dream, Sonia Simonson, Negative Sonic Boy, Warhead and a mutant called Hyde, with stealth abilities. At this time, the Thunderbird is standing on the overpass. This ensures that his vision commands the overall situation. I saw the escort car, the latest rhinoceros chariot produced by Stark Industries, and it will need Marcus's ability to open it. Thunderbird touched the headset with one hand and said. Sweet Dream sits in the driver's seat of a red sedan on the side of the road. She is not part of the combat unit, she is mainly responsible for temporary support. John, how many police cars are there? There are 2 in front of the Rhino chariot, 3 in the back, etc. I saw 2 black Escalades, probably from Sentinel Security. Quote. This news made everyone frown. Sentinel Security, a private armed force active in Louisiana. For the background of this company, Thunderbirds they have not been able to investigate clearly. It is only known that the Sentinel Security Company specifically targets mutants. They are more professional than detectives and scavengers. Polaris was transferred from a normal prison to a mutant prison, and there was no need for such fanfare. John, they're fishing, and that's obviously targeting us. Hiding began to retreat. The state government knows the identity of the North Star, and they know that they will definitely save the North Star. If sent to the prison number 5 dedicated to mutants. I want to save people again with their strength. It is absolutely impossible. So on the way, it's the only chance. Hide, Lorna is our comrade in arms, we will definitely save her. If it is not Lorna who wants to be saved today, but you, we will not give up. Marcos said. Okay, the escort vehicle is almost in place, or it is carried out according to the original plan. Warhead, you need to deal with the people of the Sentinel Security Company first. After the Thunderbird was arranged, it began to wait. This time, in order to save the North Star Lorna, they dispatched 8 mutants. When the rhinoceros chariot escorting the North Star is going downhill, a mutant used his ability to create a bulge in the cement road. The sudden bulge caused the vehicle to suddenly lose control. The driver slammed the steering wheel and applied the brakes to regain control of the vehicle. Right at this moment, the electronic components of the vehicle, side, and all burned down. This is also caused by mutants. A Delta mutant girl whose ability is directed to electromagnetic pulses. The rhinoceros chariot is completely out of control. After a bang, the vehicle rolls over and spins on the ground. 3 police cars followed closely behind. 2 more cars did not have time to brake and hit them, making a heavy dwang, dwang sound. For a while, there was a very serious car accident on this section of the road. The Thunderbird jumped from the overpass, and he took a very fast step and rushed towards the 2 police cars in front. The 2 police cars in front were not impacted. The detective got out of the car and shot him while shouting for reinforcements. For these fierce shots, the Thunderbird simply shielded its head. His physical strength is not as strong as that of Abomination or Red Tank. But ordinary thermal weapons can do very little damage to him. Unless it's a shotgun at close range. Or a highly kinetic firearm like Barrett. It is possible to cause fatal injuries. In short, the Thunderbird ability does not seem to be particularly prominent, but in fact there is no shortcoming. The Thunderbird, who rushed to the near front, punched people and flew them out. While he solved the battle on this side, Eclipse Marcos is also approaching the rhinoceros chariot. Marcos does not have the defense power of a Thunderbird, his ability is mainly to absorb and release sunlight. The heat of the sun released instantaneously can reach a high temperature of more than 1,000 degrees. To open a rhinoceros chariot from the outside, it must be Marcos to do it. The other side. 2 black Escalade cars. The mercenaries employed by the Sentinel Security Company inside got out of the car, they opened the lockbox, and the octopus-like robot rolled out of it. This is a robot specifically aimed at mutants. The mercenaries of the Sentinel Security Company gave them the name, Sharp Knife, very appropriately. Because this robot, like a sharp knife, tears through the defense line formed by mutants. After the negative Sonic Boy's warhead charged its power, it directly crashed into a vehicle, and the vehicle accurately hit the Escalade. Half of the mercenaries directly hated the Northwest. But, one by one, the light-cut, octopus-like sharp knife robot was not damaged. They came out of 2 squashed cars. The red camera above directly locks the warhead. John, the Sentinel Security Company dispatched 1, 2, 3.6 sharp-knifed robots, and my side needs support. After hearing this, the Thunderbird said to Marcos, "You open this car as soon as possible, I will go to support the warhead first." Quote. Understood. Marcos folded his palms together, and a ray-emitting solar heat cut through the side of the vehicle. Scorching rays, like cutting chocolate with a heated dinner knife. He can cut it, but not too fast. Charles's RV stopped on the side of the road, and Wanda couldn't help but stand up and said, "Charles, I'm going to help them." Quote. Charles smiled and nodded. "Why else would I let Pietro stop here and do what you think is right?" "Charles, I'm going too." Clarice raised her hand. Then she was held down by Charles. "You can't." Headquarters, Sentinel Security, Louisiana. On the screen of the command center, it is the picture of the Mutant Protection Organization solving the North Star. Thunderbird John, Aurora. Negative Sonic Boy Warhead. Eclipse Marcos. Maybe this wave can kill them all. Stupid mutant, feel the horror of this sharp-knifed robot. The staff of the command center had a feverish look on their faces. They are all staunch supporters of mutant guilt. Devils who think mutants are born filthy, cursed by God. They shouldn't live in the world. A person in charge presses the button for combat mode. Suddenly, all sharp knife robots operate at full power. The warhead blew up the two robots with a shock wave, but a special light wave formed on the surface of the robot, as if it could absorb this impact. The attack of the warhead is ineffective against them. A sharp-edged robot sticks out a spike from its tentacle and is about to stab the warhead. The Thunderbird strode forward, grabbed the tentacles of the sharp-knifed robot, and threw it aside. Then he blocked the second sharp-knifed robot. At the cost of getting a knife in the body, rip off the tentacles of the sharp-knifed robot. But the sharp-knifed robot has 8 tentacles. Even if you lose 2 or 3 tentacles, it will not affect any action. Warhead, go to the Marcos side to rendezvous. This thing can only hurt them with the ability of Marcos. Thunderbird said. Good. The warhead nodded his head. They have been cooperating with each other for a long time, and they have a tacit understanding. I saw that the warhead began to charge, and she blew up a car in the direction of Marcos. The Thunderbird jumped into the car at the end of the day and grabbed the warhead. In this way, they fled tens of meters in an instant. Hearing the roar of the car, Marcos bowed his head in fright. I saw the car flying over his head. The Thunderbird has jumped down from above holding the warhead. Taunt, can you control the angle of the warhead next time? Marcos muttered angrily. The warhead coolly gave him a middle finger. Marcos, the rhinoceros chariot is open. There are 6 sharp-bladed robots. You need to use your abilities to deal with them. Do you think I'm Iron Man's arc reactor? Marcos only felt that his head was big. His ability is to absorb solar energy and then release it. He can store solar energy, but this storage is like a dam storing water, it has a limit. Okay, it's open. At this time, Marcos burned a rectangular narrow door on the side of the car. The Thunderbird turned around and kicked the door open. Bang! Bang! What he didn't want to meet him was 2 shotguns. The Thunderbird was knocked upside down and fell hard to the ground. Seeing this, Marcos pointed his palm at the inside of the car, and the scorching light shot in, and a man's screams were directly heard inside. There is no North Star in it, we are deceived, the intelligence of the person in the police station is fake. After the intercom system finished speaking, Marcos continued, John is injured, and there are 6 sharp-knifed robots approaching on our side. Quote. I'll deal with them and prepare to evacuate. After this order was given. A total of 3 cars approached this way. They were Dream's sedan, an SUV, and a large van. Here Marcos dealt with 6 sharp-knife robots, which was extremely difficult. His ability is a point attack. The damage value caused in an instant exceeds the upper limit that the sharp-knife robot can bear. But, this instantaneous burst is also very taxing on the body. The capabilities of the warhead are indistinguishable from friend or foe, and in this environment, they do not have any effect. Wanda, who got out of the car, walked this way. Above her hands, a red mist of light lingered, just as she was about to strike. I saw a man riding a motorcycle and rushing towards the Marcos them. The motorcycle braked sharply. The rider was thrown out in an instant. In midair, a 180-degree rotation, the rider landed steadily, and at the same time a gorgeous purple samurai long knife swept across, and 3 sharp knife robots were cut off in unison. Only then did everyone see from her graceful figure that this was a woman. The samurai sword in her hand is not a physical entity. Rather, it is a purple energy light. When she danced the long knife again, the long knife transformed into 2 short swords, which were more suitable for close combat. Destroy the 2 sharp-knifed robots again, leaving the last sharp-knifed robot to escape. The woman's twin swords transformed into a 3-cross marker. Nail directly to the sharp-knife robot to make it scrapped. As if the defense of the sharp-knifed robot, the attack on her simply did not work. Wanda looked at this scene in amazement. Without her making a move, a powerful mutant actually appeared. Sentinel Security Company Command Center. After all screens went black, the person in charge, Turner, let out an angry roar. Who is that mutant just now? Mutant Protection Organization, when did it have such a ruthless role? Our hunting dogs actually have no news at all. Head, that's not the mutant protection group, that's a mutant ranger. Her name is Elizabeth Betsy Braddock, nicknamed Spirit Butterfly. Quote. She haunts all over the Americas and protects countless mutants. A subordinate found information about the Spirit Butterfly in the database. Mutant Ranger, then this time she came to the wrong place. Update the database of the sharp knife robot and generate a way to deal with this attack, so this time it is not for nothing. Turner thought for a moment and said. The sharp knife robot is an upgrade completed in this kind of battle. Spirit Butterfly and Thunderbird together go to an abandoned paper mill. This is the temporary base of the Mutant Protection Organization. More than 100 mutants shelter the base. The North Star Lorna you want to save has been transferred to prison number 5 a day earlier, and today is just a trap set by the Sentinel Security Company. Lingdi said to them. Dream Sonya's face was ugly, and said, that is the only prison where mutants are held in solitary confinement, and it is said that it is heavily guarded, and it is impossible to escape if you are locked inside. Quote. Ling Dai shook his head and said, actually, that's not the only one, nor the strictest. SHIELD's icebox prison is far more secure than prison number 5. Quote. But even if it is an icebox prison, someone can successfully escape from prison. I hope to join forces with the Mutant Protection Organization this time to attack prison number 5 and rescue our compatriots. What Ling Di said was something that Thunderbirds did not dare to think about. They're just trying to protect mutants. The Clearer and Sentinel Security Company have exhausted them. Attack on prison number 5. That is tantamount to being an enemy of the world. So, after Ling Dai's voice fell, no one in the conference room spoke, and they all looked at each other. At this time, a mutant knocked on the door and came in, saying, John, there are 4 mutants outside, and there is a netizen who claims to be Lorna. Quote. Let them wait a bit, and I'll meet them when I'm done talking. Thunderbird thought for a moment and said. He knew that Lorna was on the web and had set up a mutant mutual aid website. Since it is a netizen of Polaris Lorna, that should be the mutant asking for help. Compared with the two, the things on the Spirit Butterfly's side are more important. I think you'd better meet them, maybe that will change your decision. I could feel that they were strong, and some of them were very strong, surpassing all the mutants I had ever seen. Quote. Ling Dai looked out the door with curiosity. She has a certain ability of telepathic remote sensing. She has traveled all over the Americas and seen countless mutants. No one's energy could make her shudder. And such fluctuations are not one, but two. One is unfathomable. One is like an ocean. Thunderbird and the others were shocked by Ling Dai's words. In their opinion, the strength of the Spirit Butterfly was already extremely strong, but now the Spirit Butterfly told them that someone was strong enough to surpass all the mutants they had ever seen. At the moment, Charles is studying the reward he just received. He knew early on that Lorna was not in the rhinoceros chariot. But he did not ask about the actions of Thunderbird and others, nor did he interfere with Wanda, who was preparing to strike. Therefore, he was rewarded with a silver treasure chest. After opening, there is Krypton Superman template. Simply put, ordinary Kryptonians are not comparable to General Zod, and even less comparable to Silver Dachau. But, even if ordinary Kryptonians, if there is a yellow sun charge, it is still no problem to fight a dozen Steppenwolves. Speed, strength, and defensive capabilities, at least equal to the level of Sub-Heavenly Father. Physical fitness is my only shortcoming at present, and if I make up for this shortcoming, there is no problem in resisting the Heavenly Father. That kind of single universe level with obvious shortcomings, he can also go up and give 2 large pockets. Charles was very pleased with the reward. The silver treasure chest opened the Krypton Superman template, and he is really the Emperor of Europe. Of course. Like Krypton Superman template, why it appears in the silver chest. It's not hard to understand either. Because Krypton Superman is an ordinary Kryptonian, it is not particularly rare. After the main yellow sun, the strength will rub, like riding a rocket. The average Kryptonian Superman is not comparable to General Zod. Krypton's fertility uses gene editing technology. General Zod is the top of the warrior system. If it is a General Zod template, at least the combat effectiveness of the Heavenly Father. If the silver is great, the monolithic universe level will start and easily reach the multiverse level. Hello, may I ask which of you is a netizen of Polaris Lorna? Charles heard the sound of the Thunderbird before returning to his senses. Clarice had volunteered to stand up and said, "It's me, I met last year on the Mutant Mutual Aid website in Polaris. Quote. We are trying to save Polaris, isn't she in today's escort car? The old bottom is all out, right?" Charles complained in his heart. Fortunately, Thunderbird and others are not bad people, otherwise others would not need to be interrogated, and they would all not fight themselves. Lorna has been transferred to Prison 5, which is a prison created in Louisiana specifically for mutants. Sweet dreams, Sonia regretted. Then we can go to the prison, right? Clarice asked. Hearing these words, Ling Dai leaned against a wall with her arms in her arms, and a smile gently hooked at the corner of her mouth. Apparently, the prison robbery plan is already imperative. I'm not against robbing prisons, but you can't fight because you're not yet an adult. Charles said like an old father. The negative Sonic teenager on the side rolled his eyes. She's not an adult. However, mutants are the main precocious. The children of poor families will be in charge of the house early, and mutants will face the dangers of the world too early. We're all right, when do we do it? Quicksilver is eager to try. Because the speed is fast enough, his temperament is also relatively urgent. It was as if it was almost evening now. The thinking of normal people is to make a plan, rest for one night, and act the next day. Quicksilver's thinking is to make a plan, save people, and when you come back, take a detour to Chicago to buy hot dogs, and then you can catch the Friends broadcast. We also need to think about it. The main thing is that we need a well thought out plan. Quote. Dreams. Sonia pulled the Thunderbird who was about to speak. In this team, Sonia is Thunderbird's girlfriend. Her ability is to compile and modify memories. Regardless of ability or gender, she is calmer than others, and most of the time acts as a think tank. Ling Butterfly and these newly arrived mutants are obviously not afraid of big things. But they are different. There are more than 100 mutants sheltered here, and they need to think about these people. During dinner in the evening, Wanda saw the food here and took the initiative to share the snacks of the RV with the mutant children. Do you usually eat these? Charles pointed to the brown bread, 2 small pieces of chicken and a little veggie on the plate. Asked to the warhead sitting across from him. Otherwise, Louisiana won't offer jobs to mutants, and the scavengers have our photos and profiles. Now the shelter is funded by everyone's savings. And those mutants who are not exposed, will also fund us. Quote. Do we need to thank the state for not freezing our bank cards? Warhead put a piece of chicken in his mouth and said coldly. After dinner, Lingdi found Charles and communicated. She didn't know that Charles was the famous Professor X. Because Lingdi had never met Professor X. Professor X wants to build bridges of friendship with humans, and Magneto is a mutant supremacist. Spirit Butterfly hopes to use her power to help more mutants. As Sentinel security employees said, she is a mutant ranger. Fight the sword, be quick to take revenge. But there is no longer-term plan like Professor X and Magneto. Of course, Lingdi had heard of Professor X, and she knew that Professor X was paralyzed and needed to sit in a wheelchair, so she would not associate Charles in the direction of Professor X. I can feel that you are very strong, and you are also a psychic ability. Your psychic ability completely shielded my telepathic remote sensing. Quote. On the roof of the old factory building, Lingdi sat next to Charles, looking at the moon in the sky like a jade disc with him. So, what do you want me to do? Charles asked straight to the point. This shelters all informers, so Polaris Lorna was transferred to Prison 5 in advance. Before the prison robbery, I wanted to catch the whistleblower. My telepathic remote sensing only has the most basic inductive effect. I can't read the thoughts of others, I want you to find out that person. Hearing Lingdi say that there was an informant, Charles was not surprised. Sentinel Security Corporation's Hound Project. Quote. Use a drug called Kick to control the mutants. The effect is definitely inferior to the bodily fluids of the Illusion Master. However, the advantage is that the amount of pipe is enough. It is useless against mutants with strong willpower, but spreading fish in a large net can always control a group of mutants. The Sentinel Security Company collects mutants who are good at combat for their own use. The rest is dispersed and used as eyeliner. I'm sorry, but I can't read the memories of others without permission. Charles shook his head. In fact, I didn't take eyeliner seriously. Anyway, the strength is crushing. Regardless of the Sentinel Security Company, whether or not the wind was received in advance. The result is constant. I don't care if I don't ask, I can still get a rotten reward. After Lingdi left helplessly, the sound of the swinging system sounded, and Charles was rewarded with a bronze chest. After opening, it is a portable brainwave enhancer. It looks like a headband. The effect after wearing it is the same as the brainwave enhancer of Xavier's Genius Youth Academy. Charles tried it on. Psychic perception was instantly magnified hundreds of times. Powerful perception can reach every corner of the globe. For example, Gwen in Europe. Charles quickly found her, and Gwen seemed to be thinking about himself. The next moment, Charles's telepathic perception appeared in Brooklyn. Jessica is accompanying her sister Tracy to eat at an upscale restaurant. She will never seem out of place with that environment. The power of psychic perception comes to the Black State. Charles wanted to see what Magneto Eric's plan to take a country was. Northeast Black State. Rub. Lao Wan knocked Wakanda down. Quote. No wonder there has been no movement for so long. Eric takes Wakanda and gets Wakanda's vibranium resources. Isn't it that Wu Da-lang and Wu Song exchanged bodies, shotguns for cannons? In northern Louisiana, a car crosses a jungle road and you can see Prison No. 5. The prison was built on a flat open field. From the outside, it looks like an ordinary prison. But, when a mutant connects himself to a computer with a data cable. After a while, a three-dimensional picture of the prison appeared on the computer screen. Including all corridors, cells and firepower, all clearly defined. This can be seen from the firepower configuration. The prison has 5 times the firepower of a regular prison. At this time, half of the prisoners in the prison compound are ventilating the wind, and the other half will be scheduled to be released in the afternoon. That is, there are always half of the mutants in the cell. Mutants who are caught in prison will be put on mutant suppression collars, so we can't arrange for people to go in and get inside and outside. Thunderbird repeated the plan. From 9 to 11 a.m. every day, the prison has 2 hours to be open. From 3 to 5 p.m., it is also win time. But only half of them at a time. They can use the Phantom's abilities to create false phantoms to deceive the prison guards. The southwest end of the courtyard wall was destroyed by crushing. That was the weakest point in the entire prison. The next most important point is to destroy the mutant suppression collar. As long as there is no restraint on the suppression collar, the prisoners will become our helpers. Leave this to me, Wanda said. She had already practiced last night and could use chaos magic to complete more elaborate operations. At least it is guaranteed that the mutant's neck will not be wrung when the collar is broken. Then we will attack the main control room and the cell and rescue the rest of the people. Thunderbird looked at Spirit Butterfly and Quicksilver. He thought that the powerful mutants that Lingdi was talking about were Wanda and Quicksilver. Because Wanda and Quicksilver have shown their abilities. As for Charles, it should be a relatively ordinary mutant. First, the hidden use of stealth ability to bring everyone under the courtyard wall at the southwest end. Then, the Phantom created an illusion. It's like a normal prison facade. Smash puts his hands on the thick courtyard wall, which is being assimilated into a crystalline substance. The crushed body is also made of such a crystalline substance. This substance is characterized by its fragility. When the Smash assimilated into the 3-meter-wide courtyard wall, the Thunderbird put his hand on the Smash's shoulder, signaling that he could rest. The reason for opening such a big gap. It was to wait for the mutant prisoners to escape, so as not to be overcrowded. The Smash retreated, and the Thunderbird suddenly kicked on the crystal. Click, click. The crystals cracked in large areas, then shattered and collapsed. Such a big movement can no longer be hidden. The prison immediately sounded the alarm. The battle begins. In the warden's office, Turner, the head of the Sentinel Security Company, said to the warden, "As I said, destroy all mutants." Quote. Without saying a word, the warden gave the order. Because there was a mutant with mind control ability standing next to Turner. This is the Hound, controlled by Kirk. Quote. Last night, Sentinel Security had learned about the plans of the Mutant Protection Group. When they heard it, they were all taken aback. That group of mutants like dogs who lost their families. You actually want to attack prison number 5. Just by them. But no matter how stupid the Mutant Protection Group is. Sentinel Security still responded. This time they mobilized all the resources of Louisiana, Sentinel Security, including the purgators of 3 nearby cities. It is also being assembled at prison number 5. This will soon not be a mutant prison, but a mutant cemetery. Turner had a cruel smile on his face. The mutants of the prison compound saw a courtyard wall collapse, just before they knew what was happening. Tap-da-da. Above the watchtowers around them, machine guns sprayed dense tongues of fire. The bullet is not hitting the Thunderbirds them. Rather, all the mutant prisoners who attacked. Nope. Seeing this, Wanda shouted. She wanted to hold up the red light mist to help block the bullet, but it was too late. Seeing that the bullet is about to hit these mutants, penetrate their bodies, end their lives. Right at this moment, all the bullets froze in midair, as if imprisoned by a mysterious force. Charles stood beside Wanda at some point, gave Wanda a reassuring smile, and said, "Now change to me." Quote. Charles flicked his hand, where all the bullets came from. The soldiers on the watchtower were all beaten into a sieve. This scene stunned everyone. Thunderbird looked at Charles in fear. He realized that the powerful mutant that Ling Dai was talking about was actually the person in front of him. The warhead is like seeing a monster. She thought she was the most violent mutant protection group. But compared to Charles, he is like a baby rabbit. Turner in the warden's office only felt a chill rush up from the soles of his feet and spread throughout his body. He didn't expect the Mutant Protection Organization to have such powerful mutants. Now I only hope that the sharp knife robot can help. And all inside. The most shocking was Polaris Lorna. Because the ability used by Charles seems to be the same as hers. Wanda looked at Charles's handsome side face, that tall nose, thin lips and sword-like eyebrows, and the entire facial contour was impeccable. Although with only one move, all watchtower firepower was destroyed. Charles still looked that elegant and calm. Wanda, are you coming or am I coming? Charles turned his head to meet Wanda's eyes, his eyes touched, and Wanda's heart was as flustered as a deer. I'll do it. Don't be nervous, think about the magic alert you created, it won't be difficult to destroy the collar at all. Charles's gentle voice made Wanda involuntarily calm down. Since Charles said it wasn't difficult, she could definitely do it. Thinking of this, Wanda raised her hands, and the red mist of light lingered on the collar around everyone's neck with her thoughts. When Wanda's palm twisted slightly, the mutant suppressed the collar and also began to make a click, click sound. Charles's face showed approval. Wanda, this progress is really super fast. Think about it, in the Avengers, Wanda can only use chaos magic to tear and move things, or invade the brain to create some illusions. Now Wanda can already complete more refined operations. Of course, destroying the mutant suppression collar, Charles only needs to shake the palm of his hand. But that loses its meaning. It is still necessary for Wanda to have enough participation in the cause of saving mutants. For example, solving mutant orphans, delivering snacks to mutant children in shelters, and opening everyone's inhibition collar here. When a person does the right thing, she will reap the satisfaction in her heart that is difficult to express in words. And it will also create bonds invisibly. Click, click. The destroyed collars fell to the ground one after another, and as the inhibition ability disappeared, some mutants with alienated characteristics returned to their original appearance. But even if it were to return to its original appearance, no one would want to be locked up in this prison. Listen to me, mutants with combat capabilities, join us in storming the prison and rescuing our compatriots. If you don't have the ability to fight, you can go out from here, and someone outside will be responsible for picking you up. Quote. Thunderbird shouted loudly, directing these crowds of excited mutants. In Louisiana, Thunderbird John Orr has a strong appeal. Some of the mutants imprisoned here were members of mutant protection organizations, and some were helped by mutant protection organizations. Even if not, at least I've heard of an organization in Louisiana that is desperate to shelter mutants. So, when the Thunderbirds gave the order, the mutants at the scene divided into 2 waves in an orderly manner. One wave joined the Thunderbirds and their camp, and the other wave began to evacuate. This prison also has underground cells, which also hold mutants. My ability is healing, and I was once taken there to treat a mutant. An elderly mutant came forward and said that he should have followed another group of people to evacuate. I know that entrance, I can show you there. Thunderbird subconsciously looked at Charles. Mutants follow the most primitive strength, and when Charles saves all mutants, he becomes the leader of these people. You go to that underground cell in a team, and Pietro you go with you. Understood. Quicksilver Pietro made an, okay, gesture. Before Charles and them could break into the cell, the sharp knife robots of the Sentinel Security Company swarmed. These robots are Sentinel Security's trump card against mutants. Many of the mutants present were caught by sharp-knifed robots. Therefore, they are inherently afraid of sharp-knife robots. It was Polaris Lorna, and there was also a look of fear on her face. She told Charles, "This robot generates an energy field that counteracts the magnetic force, and the way you control the metal is useless for them." Quote. Useless. Isn't that the nature of Sentinel robots? So this sharp knife robot is a byproduct of the Sentinel robot. Nor can it be said to be a byproduct, like the so-called youth version of mobile phones. The core traits are exactly the same as those of the Sentinel robot. But the cost is low and easy to use. The main thing is that sharp-knifed robots can collect data on mutant combat. In just a split second, Charles had a clear picture of the situation in Louisiana. Louisiana's persecution of mutants must have something to do with the state's long-standing racial discrimination. Redneck doesn't look at all people of color, let alone mutants. And at the legal level, it is Trask Industries that drives all this. They took control of the state legislature and established a subsidiary called Sentinel Security to legally deal with mutants. Use sharp-bladed robots to fight mutants, collect data, and refine the development of Sentinel robots. Thinking of this, Charles wanted to test the strength of the sharp knife robot. In this way, it can be judged to what extent Trasker Industries has developed Sentinel robots. Because the Sentinel robot can only be one generation stronger than the sharp knife robot at most. He reached for the sharp-knifed robot. Metal control, this ability is released. As Polaris Lorna said, there is an invisible energy field around the sharp knife robot that can counteract the magnetic control. It should be more than magnetism. Mutants have a variety of abilities, and this energy field can offset most of it. The shock wave of the warhead, the effect on these iron pimples is also not very good. Polaris Lorna saw Charles stunned and scoffed. "I said it wouldn't work, you might as well try attacking them with something else." Quote. Also a variant of magnetism, Lorna grabbed the building on the side, the house cracked, and several steel bars dragged along Lorna's ability, piercing the sharp-knifed robot. After doing all this, Lorna also raised an eyebrow at Charles as if defiantly. What a situation. Is magnetically repulsive. Shouldn't it be same romance repulsion and opposite romance attraction? Why is this girl so hostile to herself? Charles felt that this was very wrong, but it should not be flattened. If he didn't make a move at the beginning, Charles didn't care if he looked flat or not. Anyway, there was a rotten reward to take. Now that there are no more rewards, just move your muscles. Speaking of which, he got the Krypton Superman template, and his strength has been growing when he is basking in the sun. Like a dry sponge absorbing water, the rate of growth is very impressive. To Polaris Lorna's provocation, Charles responded with a smile. I saw a sharp-knifed robot rushing towards him. Charles didn't use his abilities, but when he was very close, he suddenly threw a heavy punch. Rumble. Sharp-knifed robots are not sent flying. Instead, he was punched through by Charles, and the scrapped mechanical shell was put on his wrist. This intensity doesn't seem to be as high as expected. Charles said sincerely. Everyone looked at Charles like a monster. Just now I used a powerful metal control ability, and now the muscle power is also so strong. The sharp-knifed robot, which others could not destroy with all their means, punched him through. This is Versailles. As for Wanda, Wanda knows that in addition to controlling metal, superpowers, Charles also has the ability to transform into light and magic. She wasn't curious about why Charles had so many abilities. She had nothing but heartfelt adoration for Charles. Women in love often have little sense. Charles, if you can you help deal with the sharp-knifed robot on the right? Thunderbird calls for help from Charles. These mutants who attack the prison cells are in a triangular queue. At the forefront are Charles, Thunderbird, Wanda, Spirit Butterfly and Marcos. The left and right sides are weaker. Charles did not refuse the Thunderbird's request, he flew directly into the air, punching a sharp knife robot. The upper limit of the damage that this thing can take is about 100 tons. The defense against energy types will be stronger. This may be limited by the material, and if it is replaced with vibranium, I am afraid it will be difficult to destroy. Of course, even if the upper limit is 100 tons, there are actually few mutants who can destroy it. The strength of Steel Lux is only about 50 tons. Abomination can reach hundreds of tons of power, but he is not a mutant. In addition, hatred is not flexible enough, cannot grasp, cannot hit. Everything is empty talk. To the left of the team, Spirit Butterfly assists in dealing with the sharp-knifed robots in this direction. Compared with yesterday's situation, Ling Dai obviously felt strained. The energy field opened by the sharp-knifed robot. It has the effect of weakening her weapons. This is the data collected from yesterday's battle, and the intelligent AI in the background of the sharp knife robot will compare the data to select an energy field that restrains the ability of the Spirit Butterfly. This is also how the Sentinel robot works. Sentinel robots can use mutant abilities to use specific abilities at specific times. For example, against Burning Man, the Sentinel robot can use the Iceman's abilities. Against the Iceman, the Sentinel robot will use the Burning Man's abilities. Ling Dai cursed, and the long knife flashing purple light in her hand was at least 50% less powerful when it slashed at the sharp knife robot. Dealing with sharp knife robots is not completely ineffective, and the main efficiency is greatly reduced. It can't be as handsome as yesterday. In this way, the sharp-knifed robot will hurt the mutants behind. Ling Di did not notice that in the mutant crowd, a pair of siblings glanced at each other, and then tacitly clasped their hands together. A terrifying force field instantly formed. After sensing this force field, Ling Di turned around and jumped back behind them, and signaled the other mutants to stay away from them, so as not to be accidentally injured by the energy of the two. I saw the two siblings raise their right and left hands respectively. The raging and bursting energy roared, and more than a dozen sharp knife robots that approached were directly destroyed and scrapped. There is little skill in such an attack, just like Charles's ruthless iron fist. Only fierce enough. Speaking human words is instantaneous damage, beyond the upper limit that the sharp knife robot can withstand. Very strong mutants, the energy of the two complements each other, and can burst out with strength comparable to alpha-level mutants. Ling Dai sighed sincerely. After Charles finished solving the mutant on the right, he went to this side to finish another tale and looked at the two siblings. Fenris twins, it looks like the Sentinel Security Company doesn't know their value. If he knew the value, he would not be locked up in this number 5 prison. Fenris Gemini. Ling Di repeated Charles's words, she didn't know what the Fenris twins represented. Charles began to explain. Those are two powerful mutants, dating back decades, before the concept of mutants existed. Quote. The Fenris twins first served Hydra, and they wreaked havoc around the world against those Hydra's enemies. The Fenris twins represent light and darkness, the power of one is guardianship, the power of one is attack, and there is nothing particularly outstanding individually. But when the two hold hands, the two different energies converge, and the power will increase dozens of times. Quote. If Sentinel Security knew their worth, it would use Kirk to control them as hounds instead of being left in this prison. Ling Di was shocked by Charles's knowledge, but was more interested in what he called Kirk and the Hound. It looks like you knew about Sentinel Security's methods of controlling mutants early on. Generous gift crab. Say leaked mouth. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and support our channel.